Hello and welcome to Season 14, Episode 12 of Solely Singleton. I'm your host, Brad. This is my co-host, Eric.
How's it going?
We've got a payoff for you guys this week. Everyone who sent in their reviews for Kaldheim, for Strixhaven, for C21, all 4 of you, thank you very much.
There's a couple more than 4.
It was less than I fucking wanted. But I thank you. I realize that the COVID years was the worst part of getting these done, and these weren't the most exciting sets to a lot of people, though we'll have some words about Kaldheim in particular.
Yeah.
But yeah, we ended up actually getting a good amount of people after I guilt-tripped all of the patrons. So we have some good feedback that isn't just us and our, 10 rounds of playing Cube this year. So without any further ado, let's start this 2 episodes of Postmortem. We're starting off with one exclusively for Kaldheim, and then next week you'll all be listening to Strixhaven and C21.
Yeah, let's jump into it.
Alright, before we get into these, we're not going to be covering certain cards. We're not going to cover cards where no one had anything good to say. These are cards like Battle Mammoth, Saw It Coming, Nico, Sigrid. Those all didn't get very positive reviews from anybody, and we had no real good experience with them either, so we chucked them.
Yeah, there's no real point in talking about cards that are bad during these. If there were some interesting topics on it, then maybe we would talk about it, but nah.
We're also not going to be covering cards where a couple people mentioned them positively, but it was so rare for someone to do so, and we didn't have enough feedback with them ourselves that it wasn't worth it. These are like Asika, God of the Tree, Gravenlore, Magda. These are cards that might actually be pretty good, but there just isn't enough feedback for us to form any opinion on, and we don't have enough personal experience with them to push them ourselves.
Yeah, they were fairly positively reviewed, but just not by enough people to really say anything useful. With that out of the way, though, let's start off with the first one, which is an interesting one. We've got Clarion Spirit is 1 and a white for a 2/2 spirit. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. This
got positive reviews basically all around. It got surprisingly more positive reviews than I thought it was going to. I know, Parnell's a big fan of this and stuff, so
right.
I expected some positivity, but
then it's a 2-drop in white, and we've talked about our thoughts on 2-drop creatures in white.
That said, I do think I need to try this one out myself, because basically everyone who reviewed this had something good to say. Some people said, look, it's not Young Pyromancer, don't go into it thinking that.
Right, which is, yeah, it's pretty obviously not Young Pyromancer, and that's fine. There's a lot of difference between not Young Pyromancer and bad.
Yeah, and you brought up the Monastery Mentor bit, so you should go into that real quick.
Yeah, so I've always been hesitant about Monastery Mentor just because, yeah, it's a fine card, but most white archetypes in Cube aren't really taking advantage of what Monastery Mentor is trying to do, that type of spellsy type of thing. Clarion Spirit helps to add more to the deck to actually make a theme that you can, it can just be a small splash to your otherwise blue-red spellsy deck, but there's more than just one card.
There's more than Seeker of the Way for your backups.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, this is interesting because, I like Mentor, Monastery Mentor. It's just I've always had issues with it in Cube because of that. So having more of these that are good opens up more possibilities for me. And so, yeah, I'm interested in Clarion Spirit. I did like how people talked about later on in the game when you draw it, you can actually get the trigger, because it's a low drop, so it works out pretty well.
Now for one I've had a little experience with myself. Doomscar, which is the most positively reviewed Foretell card.
Maybe not saying much.
Not saying the greatest thing. Doomscar is 3 white for a sorcery with Destroy All Creatures and Foretell 1 white. We'll cover Foretell, I guess. During your turn, you can pay 2, exile the card from your hand face down, and then cast it on a later turn for its Foretell cost. It's Spell Morph.
Yeah.
So we did have several people talk to us about how they ran an entire foretell package. And when you run a lot of them, they are better.
Right, it's got the same morph thing of like hidden information actually adds a bit, but if you only have one of them, everybody knows what it is.
I will shout out the listener who runs a morph cube, which actually looked really fun to play.
Yeah.
And had a whole foretell package in it. But from what a lot of people were saying, they cut basically every foretell card except for maybe Doomscar with the argument of, even if you telegraph, like, I am foretelling Doomscar, your opponent now has to play around it.
Right. It's still kind of a tempo play of, like, they're going to not commit more to the board, and if they do, then you'll get them anyways. But at the end of the day, this is still a board wipe, and we have a decent number of 4-mana board wipes that do the job now.
Yeah, and this one technically can be done on turn 2+3 to get it out earlier than the others, but it tends to be played a little bit later anyway. It's too much time off,
right,
to make it the turn 3 board wipe.
Yeah, and, you know, it's one of those that, like, if you're doing it that way, the opponent knows the Doomscar is going to be cast, so it's like, yeah, it kind of slows them down a bit, but you're not going to get, like, the full board wipe potential.
Yeah, it's not going to be the same power as other 3-drop board wipe variants are.
Yeah.
The best case won't be there because your opponent simply isn't going to play into it wrong.
Yeah.
That said, forcing your opponent to play into it correct is still a positive play.
Exactly. And, like, it's still a 5-drop.
Yeah, as the backup play and just flat out cast it.
Yeah, which isn't great because we have more 4-drops and we have some 5-drops with other upsides. But, like, at the end of the day, there's cubes that 5-drop board wipes are fine in.
And at the same time, the fact that it's both is quite good.
Right.
So, yeah, overall, moderately positive. If you have interest in the card, I would say absolutely go for it.
Yeah, give it a test.
But just know that it's not some crazy all-star either.
Right.
Speaking of not a crazy all-star and also way too many goddamn words, Eric, read the next card.
Okay, we've got Helvar, God of Battle, and Sword of the Realms. So this is a dual card. So Helvar, God of Battle is 2 white. For a 4/4 legendary creature god. Creatures you control that are enchanted or equipped have double strike. At the beginning of each combat, you may attach target aura or equipment attached to a creature you control to target creature you control. On the other side, Sword of the Realms is 1 white for a legendary artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has vigilance. Whenever equipped creature dies, return it to its owner's hand. Equip 1 white. So this one seemed to be mostly about the sword, and then occasionally you would play a 4/4 for 4.
Yeah, that's what I got out of the few people who did review this. I think it was almost universal that people mentioned they were playing an equipment theme and ran him instead of playing just generically as a card.
And, I mean, we've kind of shown that, like, more of a Boros equipment thing, it's going to be a legitimate option in cubes. So, looking at these Boros equipments, the white and red equipments, yeah, Sword of the Realms seems like it fits in that kind of style.
Yeah, it is just unfortunate that Sword of the Realms is technically the backside, and Helvar he's kind of a, like, mediocre 4-drop creature.
Yeah, even in the decks that are going to be pushing equipments, Helvar's abilities aren't really they're not really a payoff, to be honest. Not worth the card.
When his ability is doing something, it is often win more.
Right.
You are usually in a good enough board state that if it's having an effect, it's unnecessary.
Yeah, I mean, there are cases where it comes up that it matters, and also just having the option of your equipment being a 4-mana 4/4 is good. But it seems like this is the Sword of the Realms, and it seems like people are happy with Sword of the Realms, at least if you're trying to push more equipments.
Yeah, so I would say if you're not pushing equipments, don't worry about it. If you are, it is a good option, but if you hate MDFCs and the complexity involved with them and all that, it's a fine pass at the same time. It is not required to try to run the equipment theme, even if it is probably a positive.
Yeah, I think there are enough other options now that, like, it'll be okay, but it does seem like Sword of the Realms is a good option if you're looking at it.
Ah, fuck, I didn't get out of this, did I?
No, you've got another MDFC, you're up.
We're going to be really sick of these by the end. Rydane, God of the Worthy, and Valkymera, Protector's Shield. Rydane is 2 and a white for a 2/3 legendary creature god. She has flying, vigilance, snow lands your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped, and non-creature spells your opponents cast with converted mana cost 4 or greater cost 2 more to cast. Valkymera, Protector's Shield is 3 and a white for a legendary artifact. If a source your opponent controls would deal damage to you or a permanent you control, prevent one of that damage. Whenever you or another permanent you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, counter that spell or ability unless its controller pays 1. Breathe.
Good job, good job. So this one is a bit different from Halvar in that it seems like Rydane is the primary one, though it did come up that Valkymera does have
use
play
cases.
patterns that'll be that'll be used.
Now, that said, I think everybody basically said Snowlands is a requirement to make Rydane worth it.
That's where you're really getting it because, I mean, it's a 3 mana, 2/3 flying vigilance, which is
it's an okay body.
A good shot, but there's some good 3-drop creatures in white that it's gonna compare with. Yeah. So the Snowlands entering tapped seems to be one of the big punishing effects.
Yeah, and the double up between that and non-creatures of 4 or more mana costing 2 more to cast, that sucked to say.
Yeah.
That's a great combination of hating on your opponent, especially if you're playing against control as like the white weenie deck.
Dude, there's a huge difference between 4 and 6.
Especially when your land for the turn enters tapped if it's a basic.
Yeah, like that is honestly a very big thing. And there are some pretty fucking powerful non-creatures that basically turning them off for 2 turns from your opponent is going to put you in a solid position. So, yeah, I mean, altogether, it seems like Rydane's fairly positively reviewed and seems to be pulling its weight.
Yeah, I am shocked that Valkymera, the backside here, actually got a couple of people saying that you use the back end. You don't just use Rydane.
Yeah, and I guess I can see that with some of the smaller, like white weenie aggro type stuff, where it's just like preventing 1 damage is basically turning off a lot of their shit with the tokens if they didn't get whatever their, token anthem is, or you O-ring it or something like that.
Yeah, or if you're playing her just in general in like a mid-range deck, and you have the front side is protecting you against your control matchups, the back side is protecting you against your aggro matchups, because all of those 2/1s for 1 are suddenly 1/1s for 1. And anytime your opponent's trying to cast a bolt or whatever, it's getting taxed.
Yeah, I mean, it does make sense, and it's nice to know that it does come up, because being a 4 mana seemed sketchy to me, but it's nice that like that option does come up.
Yeah, so let's move on to a card that I debated deleting off of this list, but let's talk about it real quick.
Okay, we've got Starnheim Unleashed, which is 2 white for a sorcery. Create a 4/4 white angel warrior creature token with flying and vigilance. If the spell was foretold, create X of those tokens instead, and it has foretell XX white. This was not that positively reviewed. I think there was one that was like, yeah, it puts Sarah Angel to shame. This is a mythic.
From the year of our Lord 2021, not 1994.
That's not a great comparison.
So the reason I didn't just delete this off the list is it was mentioned by a couple people that this was played in the MTGO cubes, and I feel like we should point out cards that people will have had more play experience with.
Yeah, and there was some that was like, it's fine. And like, okay.
I feel like you can do better than this, though. And yes. I don't think any of the reviews said otherwise.
Right. Yeah, which kind of disappointing. It'd be nice to have more foretell cards that were good, because they kind of, play together with the morph aspect to make gameplay more interesting. But yeah, I think Starnheim Unleashed is a pass for most. What's not a pass?
Let's spend 3 seconds talking about the most positively reviewed thing here. Usher of the Fallen is a single white mana for a 2/1 creature spirit warrior. It has Boast, 1 and a white. Create a 1/1 white human warrior creature token.
I don't think there was anything bad said about this other than it's just a 2-1-for-1 with upside. Like, that was the bad part.
After like 15 reviews, I stopped pulling quotes for this card.
Yeah.
Like, at a certain point, it's unanimous. This is one of the best 2-1s-for-1. It's
Right.
really good. End of statement.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's not much to it. Like, it's a simple card. It does its job, and it seems like everybody agrees that, yeah, it does its job. So with that, I think we can move into blue. We'll start with Behold the Multiverse is 3 and a blue for an instant, scry 2, then draw 2 cards, and it is Foretell for 1 and a blue. Which, okay, this is kind of a disappointing one to review because it seems like people liked it. And then another card came out.
So let's real quick take a moment to compare it to Memory Deluge, which is 2 blue for an instant. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast the spell. Put 2 of them into your hand and the rest in the bottom of your library in any order. And it has flashback for 5 blue.
Yeah.
Memory Deluge, from multiple people, basically made this card obsolete. Now, there is a difference. Memory Deluge was rare. Behold the Multiverse is a common.
Which, yeah.
We didn't get that many Pauper players giving in reviews this time, which was a little sad because I wanted to shout out some Pauper staples. The few things that people did mention show up here, but Behold the Multiverse wasn't even brought up by Pauper players when they were talking about it too much, so I'm gonna go with maybe in low power cubes and Pauper cubes it's still good.
Yeah, I mean, they do have decent options, but, I mean, it seemed like Behold the Multiverse was a fine card. It's just Memory Deluge is better for what it's trying to do. Everybody's basically agreeing. And there's only so many spots for your larger draw spells. And, like, you've got Factor Fiction and Memory Deluge. And it's like, how many slots can you have? So I don't think you're going to go wrong with Behold the Multiverse, but it just seems like there's a few more better options now.
Yeah. So it's unfortunate it got outclassed so soon, but it seemed like it was good when it came out.
Right.
So let's talk about one that actually was well reviewed by Pauper players and others, which is Bind the Monster, which is a single blue mana for an enchantment aura. Enchant creature. When Bind the Monster enters the battlefield, tap enchanted creature. It deals damage to you equal to its power, and enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. This was brought up as basically the best blue removal spell in Pauper. Hilariously, someone who owns a 1-drop cube mentioned it's probably the best removal spell in 1-drop cube too, for anyone out there owning one of those. There you go.
Yes, for all the people that have the 1-drop cubes.
All one of you in the audience, there's your advice.
Right.
But this got generally great reviews from anyone who did talk about it. Now, it was mostly people in lower power settings or in rarity restricted cubes, stuff like that.
Yeah.
We had a couple peasants talk about it. I'm pretty sure Spooty still runs this and likes it.
I did like that somebody brought up the ninja interaction where, like, it turns off their blockers for ninjas to get in, and the tempo aspects work well in that aspect.
Yeah, I don't have actual experience with Bind the Monster myself, but I can definitely see where in a lower power setting it might be great to grab. I'll probably be keeping an eye on it for the budget cubes.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure it's making it in your primary cube.
No, unfortunately not. But I don't think I'm really hurting for, like, blue removal in my cube, though.
No, generally not. So, but yeah, I mean, Bind the Monster seems like it's doing its job pretty well.
Damn it, I didn't even get out of the next batch because we have back-to-back long-ass ones. Enjoy.
Okay, next up, we'll do Valki, God of Lies, and Tybalt, Cosmic Imposter. Valki, God of Lies is 1 and a black for a 2/1 legendary creature god. When Valki enters the battlefield, each opponent reveals their hand. For each opponent exile a creature card they revealed this way until Valki leaves the battlefield. You can pay X to choose a creature card exiled with Valki. With converted mana cost X, Valki becomes a copy of that card. On the backside, Tybalt, Cosmic Imposter is 5 black-red for a 5 loyalty planeswalker Tybalt. He has a ability as Tybalt enters the battlefield, you get an emblem with you may play cards exiled with Tybalt, Cosmic Imposter, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. He has a +2 exile the top card of each player's library. He has a -3, exile target artifact or creature, and he has a -8, exile all cards from all graveyards, add red, red, red.
So this was the card that I
Ugh.
think we collected the most words about, in addition to it itself having so many words.
Yeah, this one, there's a lot of words. A lot of words.
So I do like this card. I unfortunately have almost all of my playtime in budget cubes where this was not an option.
No.
But I was a big fan of this card, and from what I was reading, people are basically saying, you play it for the boring front half, that's pretty okay.
Yeah.
It's solid, you can make it as your excuse to play it. The back half is the fun half, but it's rare to see it happen. When it happens, it's cool as hell, though.
Yeah, it seems like everybody's kind of accepted that, like, this card goes in your black section because you're playing it for Valky, God of Lies. That's how it's almost always going to get played.
And it's not an exciting card when you're playing it that way. It's just okay.
Yeah, it does its job, and it is fine. But it's got the hidden excitement mode of Tybalt, which actually seems like a fairly good payoff. Which is cool. I mean, it's rare because it's a 7-drop. Like, you're not going to be able to cast that very often, but that's cool.
Yeah, so I don't have personal experience with it. I know a lot of people used a lot of words to defend the fact that it's okay. Boy, oh boy, did you all write novels.
There was a lot of interesting stories of how
Yes.
the X ability on Valky can matter. Basically saying, like, yeah, that's not just flavor text. It does come up every once in a while when you rip their questing beast or their whatever the fuck your story was.
Uro got brought up by 3 different people looking at my notes right now.
Okay, yeah.
I see Uro. So I guess you all got to do something dirty with Uro.
It seems like it. Which, I mean, that's cool because, like, at its base, it's like a Mesmeric Fiend, but kind of worse. So, like, it's nice that that X ability, there's some interesting play patterns that people enjoy, right? Like, the fact that we got so many stories shows how fun the card is, right?
Yeah.
And, like, that's good. Like, having fun cards in cubes are cool. So, yeah, I'm a pretty big fan of Valky just because it has that fun aspect, and, like, it's not bad either.
All right, so it's time to talk about the next card. Before I read it, the next card is Briggy, God of Storytelling, and Harnfell, Horn of Bounty. Briggy was the card in Kaldheim that had the most whiplash responses to it being either great or absolute trash.
Yes.
It seems like this is a very divisive card on where people land on it. So Briggy, God of Storytelling is 2 and a red for a 3/3 legendary creature god. Whenever you cast a spell, add red. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. And she has creatures you control can boast twice during each of your turns rather than once. That doesn't matter at all. You're here for the first ability.
Yeah.
Harnfell, Horn of Bounty is 4 and a red for a legendary artifact with discard a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. Harnfell is not why people are playing this. It's okay. I think it got brought up only in a couple reviews.
Yeah. I mean, it got brought up as one of those, like, late game, you can try and dig
Yeah.
for your answer, essentially.
So I don't think Harnfell is enough for anyone to actually want to play this card.
No. We're here for Briggy.
Yeah, Briggy, I guess is how you pronounce it, not Briggy. Briggy? I don't care. I don't
know,
give
dude.
a shit. I
Got a
don't
story
care
going.
about your stupid fucking magic names anymore. I'm so sick of reading these made up fucking legendary names. I almost killed myself reading that fucking D&D set.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to this episode.
I mean, we're here for Storm. Like, let's just say it. We're here for Storm.
And even then, we had a lot of people say, only play it in a powered cube with Storm. Do not play it anywhere except for a powered cube with Storm. And we had other people saying, do not even play this in a powered cube with Storm. It's trash.
Because your Storm decks are like, you don't want to be in red for this. Like, Just get out of that.
Or it's too much mana to set up and then keep it around in a powered cube
Right.
for your combo deck to then try to go off with.
All that said, though, there were some fairly good reviews about it being doing things that you would expect it to do, kind of stuff.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say, if you are the reason that you have Storm in your powered cube, you love this card and I don't have to review it for you.
Yes, that makes sense.
If you're hesitant to put this card in your cube, you're probably not going to like it because you probably don't even like Storm in your cube in the first place.
Yeah, I that's probably a good summation of the divisive nature of this card, being that, like, if you want it, you know you want it, and it'll probably do what it's going to do. But if you don't, there's no interest in this. Like, it's not going to surprise you.
Yeah, you're basically looking at this in the more combo-centric your cube is. If you're abusing the hell out of Luris and Monastery Mentor, and you name it, you've got a bunch of 0 drops, you're playing baubles, you're playing all that shit.
Yeah.
If that's what your cube looks like, Briggy is probably pretty good.
Yeah.
If not, pass.
Yep.
So let's go to a good boy, Eric.
Yeah. Next up, we've got Goldspan Dragon, which is 3 red for a 4/4 dragon with flying and haste. Whenever Goldspan Dragon attacks or becomes the target of a spell, create a treasure token. Treasures you control have tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 2 mana of any one color. So, I mean, this is overall fairly well reviewed. Basically, everybody brought up the other options in 5 being like Thundermaw, Help Kytt, Glorybringer, saying those are probably still better, but Goldspan Dragon is up there and doing its job.
Yeah, everyone just seemed to positively say, like, it might not be the best one, but I like it.
Yeah, and like it's doing what you want in that 5-drop dragon spot. So cool. And there was talks about it going pretty well in the Gruul decks because that extra mana from the treasures can kind of like help that mid-rangey Gruul a bit more.
Yeah, anyone who's trying to ramp into, like, you have a 7-drop and like 2 6-drops and stuff.
Yeah, where like 5 isn't really the end.
Yeah, you're not playing a low to the ground Gruul mid-range deck. You're playing the mid-range deck that ends at the lower end of ramp creatures. You're not in like a super ramp deck, but you're in a fat green-red mid-range deck.
Right, which is cool. I mean, those are kind of fun decks, especially when when it's like all the steps are coming together and you're playing your dragons and you're getting treasures and you're casting other things that are big, and it's like, that's fun.
It's a comfy Saturday afternoon deck. The one you draft after you've had a few.
Yeah. After your pod deck has failed, you're like, you know what? I'm just going to play some big Gruul.
Yeah. I want to swing big things sideways.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it seems like Goldspan Dragon, I mean, you have to make the decision on how many 5-drop dragons you want. There's Thundermaw, Glorybringer, but Goldspan is now a new option. If you're interested in it, give it a shot.
All right, so the next card we have to talk about failure a little bit. And not a failure of the card, a failure of me. So to show you guys how the sausage is made a little here, when we do these episodes, I compile all of the set reviews and get them into like a big folder together. And then I harass people 15 episodes in a row and pester all the patrons to keep sending them because not enough of them show up. Eventually, I have enough to work with.
There's never enough, though. We can always use more.
So, once I have them all together, I will usually go through the set and drag and drop pictures in to act as, the beginning of a section before I start pasting everybody's responses in, and then I start formulating a section, blah, 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 and we refine it down.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, someone will bring up a card that only they bring up. This happens. We named a couple of them at the beginning of this.
Right.
Asika got out of the tree, got mentioned by a whole 2 people out of over 30 reviews. Like, there's not enough data for me to point to if it's good or not. The 2 people that reviewed it liked it. That happens. We don't really want to focus on every card in the set. When we have someone, bringing up the 1-drop cube, we don't need to bring up an obscure 1-drop common for you guys. However, every once in a while, one that I didn't really pay attention to
keeps popping up.
I'm on like 11, 15, and I'm like, I've seen this card like 5 times now. This isn't isolated anymore.
Right.
So now I have to go through, find the card, because I probably don't even remember what it reads. Read the card and go, oh, shit, that looks okay. And then I have to go back through and actually read all of those old previous talks about that card, get them added, and it can be rather annoying. So, this was one of those that flew under my radar. This is Tormentor's Helm, which is a common. It is a single red mana for an artifact equipment. It has equip 1, and it has equipped creature gets +1/+1, and whenever equipped creature becomes blocked, it deals 1 damage to defending player. It is an innocuous little equipment.
Right. It is. I mean, it doesn't do much. It's a 1-drop, equip 1, +1/+1, and then a little bit of extra. But it's a common. It's a low-drop artifact equipment. There's more and more push to equipment synergies in red and in white.
Yes, especially with how sets are going this year.
Yeah, so all of that coming together seems like people are like, yeah, it's not the best, but it does its job well. It's a low drop. It's low to equip. It buffs some stuff. It makes blocking a little bit more annoying. It's an artifact. It's an equipment.
One of the big things I saw mentioned was it is a 1-drop, 1 to equip, and it gives both a power and a toughness, not just power. Meaning it occasionally makes something live when it normally wouldn't, if it just had like Bone Split or whatever attached.
Right, those 2/1s are now 3/2s and can actually go through just a random chump block token.
And when your chump block token blocks it, you still take a damage anyway, making it very obnoxious.
Yeah.
So the card in general, very innocuous.
But seems to do exactly what it needs to do, essentially, in the decks that it's trying to support.
Yeah, and quite a few people brought it up, especially for lower power settings and stuff, but just in general, if you're looking at equipments, this is one to at least think about testing.
Yeah, keep it on your radar.
So, speaking about equipments, let's talk about the other thing, which is vehicles. And probably the other most talked up card in this set. Dear God, you guys love this card, and I don't blame you after actually having played with it. Although now I can't because some fuckers in Pioneer made it too expensive.
Yeah, we've got Asika's Chariot, which is 3 in a red for a 4/4 legendary artifact vehicle. Crew 4. When Asika's Chariot enters the battlefield, create 2/2 green cat creature tokens. Whenever Asika's Chariot attacks, create a token that's a copy of target token you control. Gotta say, not a huge fan of the way the wording goes and reading that out.
Hey, it's easier to read if you get the arena version where they nerfed it so it only makes 1 cat, even though it has 2 cats, which is proof that arena is dog shit and we should never ever install that garbage ass program.
Did they actually do that?
They did that.
Oof. Yeah, I would not be interested in this card at all for that.
They're doing like the live nerfs, and except like this is like the baby era where they haven't figured out how to massage a card and they just bat it in the face.
Yeah, that's like, that sounds awful. That just doesn't, like, no. But as it's actually printed, 2/2s for 4, crew 4, and then when it attacks, you're making another 2/2. Or there's people bringing up the fact that there's more and more tokens, there's better tokens out there, there's more interactive token copying, so there's some other stuff that can be done as well.
Yeah, it was universally beloved. No one had a bad thing to say about this card for the most part. Like, it had a ton of positivity towards it.
This was another one that had stories to
it.
It was like, guess what I got to copy kind of thing. And like, I like those cards. I like those cards where people send us a story because it's interesting and it's like, yeah, this card's good. But not only is it good, I got to do this thing. And that was awesome.
Yeah, so this is, again, it's always hard with the glowing reviews to talk too much about them other than like, I have played this card. It is very good. Other people have played this card. They love it. If you are even remotely reading this card and having any interest in it, go buy one. It's still somewhat cheap, even though Pioneer fucks up everything. Stop playing Pioneer.
Yeah, what's it at? Like 7-ish? Something like that?
Yeah, it spiked. I had it in one of the cubes and it was $1. And then over the course of 3 days, it went from like $1.80 to $6.50 or something.
Ooh, yeah, it's like 5, 6.
Yeah, you can see the spike over like a weekend.
Which is not too expensive for
No,
most cube
for normal
owners,
people,
but
that's fine to toss $5 out for a card. But it was infuriating.
yeah, once you already have the cube, spending $5 to make an upgrade is fine. But trying to make a budget cube from scratch, yeah, that's a bit much for what it's doing.
All right, let's talk about a card that I undervalued the hell out of.
Okay, we've got Toski.
He has a cute name. I know.
Get toasted.
I know.
Toski, Bearer of Secrets, is 3 and a green for a 1/1 legendary creature squirrel. The spell can't be countered. It is indestructible. Toski, Bearer of Secrets attacks each combat if able. And whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So, I mean, everybody compared this to Edric. This is the obvious comparison. We've had Edric for a while now. I don't like Edric. There's a lot of play patterns that just don't work in Cube anymore with Edric.
This has a couple upsides. 1, it's monocolor. 2, it's indestructible.
Yep. Can't be countered. Like, all of that coming together is like, your chance for failing and getting blown out is low. Like, it's going to do its job. It's not just going to go out there and die.
Yeah, and you're probably not building a bad deck that relies on it to save it. Like, I've seen Edric tempo decks before that do okay in a cube and go 2-1, and they're like, did Edric resolve and not get immediately blown off the board? Then woohoo, I win. But if anything doesn't go right, the deck's kind of just a bunch of 2 power and 1 power creatures that are, mediocre, and they don't have a good way to finish it out. And they're not playing as good of a tempo deck because they had to play a blue-green 3-drop, and it kind of limited them. They had to push in.
Yeah, there's a bunch of issues with that style that it seems like Toski doesn't fall into the pitfall of.
Yeah, I just like that he's not blue-green. And from what I've been reading here, people are putting out like Gruul, Jund, Knight. Like, people are putting out all sorts of different stuff. Selesnya tokens got brought up.
Dude, I would love the Gruul, like Toski in that Gruul deck. Oh man, I'm here for that. But yeah, Selesnya tokens, that would be just a lot of value going on there. So it's not for everybody though. Like, it's still a 4-mana creature.
And while it was positively reviewed, there's a huge difference in the number of reviews between it and Azeka's Chariot.
Yeah.
Azeka's Chariot, I gave up again. After like 15 or so reviews, you just stop putting in the information and you're like, got it.
Right. And I mean, there is the issue of like, yeah, it's indestructible, but it's still a 1/1. So like, if they have a 2/2 and you don't have the rest of the board or whatever, and they board wiped or something like that, like, it's not an immediate, oh, I've played this, I win the game kind of thing. But it seems like it does a good job of adding a bit extra to those decks that are having fun.
Yes, it surprised me.
Which is awesome. I'm a huge fan of that. Because, like, I like the idea of Edric decks, other than the fact that I had to play Edric.
All right. So let's finish up green here with the final one, and everyone knows who it's going to be. Vornaclex Monstrous Raider is 4 green for a 6/6 legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor. He has trample, he's got haste, and if you would put 1 or more counters on permanent or player, put twice that many of each of those kinds of counters on that permanent or player instead. If an opponent would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, they put half that many of each of those kinds of counters on that permanent or player instead, rounded down. Vornaclex is wordy. Also, very good.
I enjoyed that people are like, you know what? A hasty Colossal Dreadmaw? Solid.
It's true, though. Like, we talked about this before. Memes aside, Colossal Dreadmaw memes, I know, I love them too.
Yeah.
Memes aside, change it over to dragons.
Right.
The difference between a hasty and non-hasty dragon with square stats is you can't understate the difference. Like, it's night and day.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Goldspan Dragon without haste is not a playable card.
Yeah, not at all.
Like, we wouldn't even... Nobody would have fucking tested it. So, yeah, haste is big.
Now, that being said, the Dreadmaw mode, memes aside, very good. But basically everyone has pointed out, like, tokens are ubiquitous now.
Mm-hmm.
They're everywhere. Planeswalkers alone make this card crazy. The fact that even if you aren't playing one, your opponent is. Like, You play it because 6/6 Trample Haste is good enough as a creature to beat face with in your mid-range or your ramp deck or whatever. And then you just get blown out when your opponent is playing a Vornaclex and suddenly your planeswalkers suck ass, or they drop down a creature that's suddenly like, a 10/10 or something when it should have been a 5/5.
There's a decent amount of random counters that happen, and just because they're good cards. And like, it can push you if you have Vornaclex, and it can punish the opponent because those good cards are no longer good.
Yeah. In general, there are options in the green 6-drop slot. Vornaclex is yet another. Yeah. Not mandatory by any means, but no one really has a bad thing to say. Like, the base body gets there, and then you have the abilities which just work well in how cubes tend to be constructed.
Right.
All right, let's move into multicolor, Eric, and get about ready to wrap up this.
Okay.
Wrap this up. I had a stroke.
Yeah, I'll take this next one. We've got Coma Cosmos Serpent, which is 3 green, blue, for a 6/6 legendary creature serpent. The spell can't be countered. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 3/3 blue serpent creature token named Coma's Coil. Sacrifice another serpent to choose one. Tap target permanent. Its activated abilities can't be activated this turn. Or Coma Cosmos Serpent gains indestructible until end of turn.
Okay, this is best summed up. There were some well thought out reviews. There are 2 of them that perfectly sum this up. I will let Eric take the best one. The one that is most correct is most likely. This card is really powerful, but unnecessary.
And the other one is, it's a giant serpent, it can't be countered, it makes more serpents, slices and dices, and is great if you want a giant blue-green card in your cube.
And that was all in caps lock. And that person is correct.
It is a giant serpent, and it slices and dices.
I really cannot understate how much I fucking love giant idiots in my blue-green section.
Yeah, I mean, it's been like that forever.
I know. Since before any of them were good, god damn it.
Yeah, but now we've got good ones, and I'm a big fan of the natural order targets that are big.
Yes.
That are in this.
And a lot of people did bring up natural order or show and tell, etc., because it's in the right colors.
And like that's just good value. It's good plays, dude. It's one of those, like, you don't need Coma to make natural order good, but they go well together.
And multiple people did bring up, like, it's not on the power level of Oko or Uro. Hydroid Crassus is probably just a better card, but who fucking cares? You're playing this card because you want the sweet cheat into play target or ramp target, and it is a flashy boy. You want to be playing this.
And it seems fun. Like, once you're playing it, it's just like, dude, make it serpents.
I will once again complain, though, that this card is randomly incredibly expensive, and I don't see why.
It's a legend.
If it was printed 4 years ago, this card would be $3 right now, tops.
Probably, maybe, yeah.
I don't get it.
I mean, Simic's good now, dude.
Let's talk about the big surprise of the set.
Oh, yeah.
The other ubiquitously loved cards I knew were going to be so. Like, no one was going to bet against Usher of the Fallen. I already knew Asika's Chariot had rave reviews. Like, that wasn't a big shock.
That was pretty obvious once you paid attention to Cube at all.
This one, though, I am very happy with the response it got. So we've got Showdown of the Scalds, which is 2 red-white. That's right, it's a Boros card, and it's good. Oh, shit. It's an enchantment saga. Saga is step 1. I'll still never figure out how to say these.
It's always, every single time is different, too. That's the best part, because it's like, how do I say this?
Exile the top 4 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. And then on Sagas 2 and 3, it has the same ability, which is whenever you cast a spell this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. You are here because this is a red-white draw 4 for 4.
Yeah. And, I mean, the other parts are not bad. Like,
no.
That's doing its job. And it's actually interesting to me in the kind of, like, there's a bit more of the Clarion Spirit, Monastery Mentor kind of thing. Like,
yeah, the fact that it could go anywhere. This doesn't have to be a Boros aggro card. This goes in any deck that is going to play red-white.
Exactly, which is, that's pretty rare for Boros. Usually Boros is like, it's either hyper-aggressive or Well, or I guess it's a cheat target or something, but it seemed like this card was just positively reviewed over and over again. People enjoyed playing it, flickering it.
That was the one thing, flickering.
Yeah.
It got brought up by multiple people. This wasn't just someone mentioning this. Multiple people brought up how in a white X deck that has flicker going on, this is solid. So for a random anecdote, when I was doing these, the first email that mentioned this had a 4-word review of it, which was just amazing feeling with flicker wisp, smiley face. And I was like, I guess I'll put this in the notes for this random Boros card. Sure. And then,
That's
of course,
awesome.
it exploded into, like, we had, like, over a dozen people tell us how much they loved this card. But it was just entertaining. That was, like, the first thing I read. I'm like, great. That review is helpful.
Yeah, and like you said, it's not the only review that talked about Flicker Wisp or Flicker strategies. Like, that's a thing that happens in white, and it's pretty powerful with Shadows of the Scalds. Like, you're getting a lot of value there when you're flickering it. And I really enjoyed that people were overall positive about it throughout the spectrum of red-white. Like,
Yes.
aggro, mid-range, control stuff. Like, it goes in your red-white decks if you're looking for it. Like, it works.
And this
Which
is
is
when I
awesome.
remember being, like, generally positive about it. I don't think I was, like, super on it, but, like, generally was like, hey, maybe it'll be good.
Right.
And then I just kind of forgot about it, which kind of is, like, the theme of Kaldheim here, too.
Well, yeah, but also Boros is always where we're like, you know what, let's try some new Boros tech. And it rarely works out. So I think we've kind of tempered our expectations a bit.
So I was just really happy that this card was super well liked by everybody.
Yeah, definitely. If you're not on it, give it a shot. Like, at least give it a playtest because it seems like it's done quite well.
All right, so let's real quickly bring up 2 land cycles and then talk about some final thoughts here. The first of these is real quick. This had a snow land, dual land with land types cycle. They're like Alpine Meadow is one of them, which is a snow land, mountain plains, which means it taps for red or white, and then it just has Alpine Meadow enters the battlefield tapped.
And it's common.
Yeah, and there's a cycle of these. They got brought up by 2 people who actually had pauper cubes, both of them saying they loved these cards. We did have one person who was a troll who definitely brought up the Spooty life hack of you just get out your Sharpie and now you own dual lands. I support this decision wholly.
I'm behind it, dude. Seems good.
Strong recommend, kids.
Yeah, strong recommend on that. But it's also nice that, like, for pauper cubes, there's another option that has the typing. So, cool.
So the other part of this is the pathways.
Right, and these are the pathway lands, which are one land on one side, another land on the back side. So, for example, we've got Bark Channel Pathway, which is a land that taps for green. On the other side, it's Tide Channel Pathway. It's land, it taps for blue.
Yeah, and these got brought up not that commonly. It's kind of the same deal as when we were talking about Zendikar. The people who brought them up are like, look, they're not as good as the best dual lands, but they're cheaper than the best dual lands. They're all somewhat affordable right now.
And they kind of get the job done well enough.
Yeah. So if you're looking for something and you don't want to shell out the real money and you don't own a Sharpie, then the pathways may be for you. But if you own a Sharpie, hit up that other cycle.
I do like that the pathways exist as another option because they're interesting cards, but not breaking it into the fetch dual shot.
Let's talk about Kaldheim.
Overall, not bad.
I shared this on Twitter already, but while I was putting together show notes for these episodes, I realized that I had undervalued Kaldheim. In my mind, this set was entirely mediocre and forgettable. I forgot how many cards in the set I actually liked and even included in budget cubes when I went back to check, and how many of them were actually from Kaldheim. Other ones that I had already bitched about that couldn't be in budget cubes, and I was like, okay, this set is better than I remember. And I gotta say, like, the set's good. Like,
it's not the best that we've had. I mean,
No.
like, this is, honestly, it feels like the kind of set that we had years back, where it's like there were some solid options and a couple good cards.
Before Guilds of Ravnica, where every set after that started going more and more and more.
And this is exactly where I want sets for Cube. Like, these are the ones that feel good, because it's like, yeah, there's a bunch of new options. There's a couple good cards, but it's not overwhelming. You're not changing entire archetypes. You're not changing out cards that you just were playtesting 3 months ago because it's another set with 50 playtest cards. It feels good, but at the same time, we had so many sets that had so many cards that were just good in Cube that, like, I can understand why you said, like, Kaldheim felt like it was a just mediocre whatever, but, like, it's solid.
Yeah, this is a set that, in review, my opinion of it has drastically increased.
Yeah.
I can't say the same thing for Strixhaven that we'll be covering next week. No. Much more briefly.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good thing we've got the Commander set to go with that one.
Yeah, so as a spoiler for next week, Strixhaven has less cards to talk about than C21, and C21 had way less new cards in it in total.
Yeah.
There are good cards in Strixhaven. Strixhaven is just a bad set. But that's for next week.
Yeah. Yeah, but Kaldheim, not bad. Not bad.
All right. Let's wrap this up, hit our outro, and deal with a bunch of news.
Sounds good.